Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for signing in this morning. We're going to continue with lesson 16 today. I know that last Friday we did have that makeup day. Um, I hope that everyone that needed those extra points completed the assignments. They were really easy assignments. And depending on how grades are looking like this week, I'll see if we're going to have any more extra credit assignments. So we're going to go ahead and get started. In this lesson, we are going to review both An American Plague and Fever 1793, and we want to look at the structure of how An American Plague is being written. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So our focusing question is, what were the effects of the unfolding crisis on Philadelphia and its citizens? And our content framing question is, reveal what does a deeper exploration of individuals' roles reveal in Fever 1793 and An American Plague? So we're going to keep that question in mind. First, let's start off by uh, having a quick summary of chapter 15 of Fever 1793. So, as you can remember, the last thing that we stayed in chapter 14 was how Maddie had been carried by her grandpa into the French hospital, and now she was recovering and it seemed like she was doing better. So at this point she's still recovering at Bush Hill, which is the that hospital that they just turned the mansion into a hospital. She's hearing stories about the epidemic, how it's hitting Philadelphia, how there's a bunch of orphan children, a lot of dying men. There's a lot of thieves. So there, remember, if you think back to when we were talking about chapter 4 of An American Plague, they're talking about how there's not really any government running Philadelphia at this point. It's just every official has really left the city and they're just fending out for themselves. So there's a lot of thieves. There's a lot of people dying. There's a lot of kids being left orphans. Um, and everyone's just kind of relying on the kindness of other strangers. Matilda is thankful that she doesn't hear stories about anyone that she knows, so she's glad that at least at this point she doesn't think that the people that she knows, like Eliza or Nathaniel, if they're sick, so it seems to her like they're fine, or her mom. On the 10th day of Matilda's recovery, she's visited by Dr. Devis, a Frenchman who advised her to eat and rest. So again, remember, the French doctors do not believe in the blooding. They don't take up blood from the people. They just kind of let them rest and feed them and like keep them in a clean area and just let them recover. At Matilda is already at her final stages of her recovery, so she's moved to a barn. Her grandfather tries to keep himself busy and be helpful in Rush Hill. He's trying to organize food deliveries, attending committee meetings. He's also flirting with Miss Flag. So he's just trying to keep himself busy and like be as helpful as possible. And as Matilda's getting better, she thinks of her distant friends and family. So she's thinking about her mom, she's thinking about her friends. And then a clerk informs Matilda that they haven't been able to contact her mother. So if you remember, her mom had caught the yellow fever, and that's why Grandpa and Maddie had left the city, and they still haven't been able to find the mother. So the clerk is talking about when she's released, she's gonna have to be taken to an orphanage house because they can't find her mom and no one can come and claim her. And of course, Maddie's protesting and she doesn't want to go to an orphanage. But of course, Grandpa steps in and he says that he'll take her in as his guardian. And then they both plan to take the wagon into the city the next day. So once Maddie's recovered, Grandpa's already recovered, they're going into the city to see what they can do and if they can find their mom. So that's the end of chapter 15. We're going to move on to chapter 7 of An American Plague. So in this chapter, we're presented with a lot of information. We're kind of being given what the action plan is now that they realize that there's no government really running things and people have to look out for themselves. So there's a lot of chaos and confusion. And of course, some people have stepped up to really take those leadership positions. The town of Bush Hill was very weak and it had large numbers of fever. a lot of children, just like in chapter 15. A lot of children have become orphans, and thankfully there's this man called Israel who creates this big orphanage for children and calls them the alms house. So he's trying to look out for those kids that are left without parents, that will would starve or die if they're left on their own, and he's just trying to take care of them. The Bush Hill Hospital is desperate for doctors. They have black nurses, but they can only do so much. They can't really do any other procedures. Dr. DeVries was called in, and he doesn't believe in the rush cure. So this is another doctor that's implementing a different type of technique. He doesn't want to do the like taking out the blood like the other doctors. So he's providing his patients with a different alternative treatment. So he's giving them fresh air. He's stimulating their blood with wine. He's more focused on the healing powers of nature. So if you think back to chapter 15, it's very similar too. So, and the doctors are approaching something besides, maybe pumping up with medicine or trying to do something else. All they're trying to do is like rely on nature, rely on self healing, and letting them rest and giving them that extra help through natural ways, but not really doing too much or taking out their blood or anything like that. They're preferring to do something more natural. So a lot of cities and states around Philadelphia have gone on lockdown. Um, you can relate it back to even now lockdown, as in like people are staying in their houses, they're social distancing. The people that are stepping up to those leadership roles are going around checking how many people are infected. They're checking how many people need to get out of their houses because there's other people infected, those sorts of things. No one's really going in or out of the cities. Packages are being soaked with vinegar and they're being purified. Just like a lot of us, when we order things from Amazon and things like that, we kind of spray them off with Lysol or we try to clean the packages. They're keeping those same precautions too. So when we talk about the people that took up leadership, I don't have a bulletin point for that, but at this point, the captain's realizing that they need to reset the roles that everyone has in the city. So they start creating committees and subcommittees and just pretty much breaking down people into groups and like assigning them certain tasks and certain goals that they need to complete in order to be able to get the city back and going, making sure that the people that are sick are getting out of the way. At this point, they're trying to create budgets. They're trying to see how much money they're going to borrow from the city in order to pay the people who are taking care of the dead bodies, who are the doctors, who are the nurses, the medicine, the food, all those sorts of things. They end up calculating about $31,000 that they're going to invest into the city in order to keep it running. And at this point, they can't really run it by anyone because there's no one to really agree or not. So they're just kind of on survival mode and doing everything that they can to help and keep everyone safe and keep everyone healthy. So at that point, that's just pretty much what they're explaining in that chapter. So what did we notice about how Murphy organized a chapter? So Murphy is the author of an American Plague. So if we really observe the way that the chapter's broken down, they give us a lot of information, but he keeps a specific organization. So he begins by describing the continuing problem and how the solutions have felt. So they start talking about the ways that they've tried purifying the air, the things that they've tried to really keep people in calm and like help them as much as possible, but a lot of those things are not working out. So he's presenting the things that are the problems and what they're doing to fix it, and what things have worked, what things have failed. For the most part, a lot of things have failed because they don't really have a lot of information on what the yellow fever is. They still don't know like what's going on, so they're trying to figure out blindly. He then talks about the committees being formed to address and work on the problem. So again, like I mentioned, there's committees, there's subcommittees. Each one has a certain task and is responsible for doing certain things. And he's talking about them in detail. And then he addresses several individuals in order who help solve the problem. So, like I mentioned, Israel, also the captain, all the people that are stepping up in those leadership roles that are trying to help the city. That's the way that Murphy organizes a chapter 7 and tries to explain all the information, all the details that are going on. And I think he does a pretty good job. So now we're looking at our homework. So that's what we have for today's lesson. You don't really have any homework assignment today. You are responsible for completing the attendance form and the exit ticket. So that should be located exactly where you found the link of the video. It's also linked on the post that I posted in the morning. Make sure that you're completing those so you can get credit. Remember, every exit ticket you do, it's 10 extra points. Also, make sure that you're keeping up with the readings. I know that some of us might feel overwhelmed because it's 2 books, but if you catch up, you'll be where you have to be. I know that it might seem like a lot of reading, but it's actually not a lot of reading. I'm just really trying to have you keep up with the readings because remember, we're building up to our end of module assessment, and that's a research paper, and it's obviously going to involve a lot of the readings, a lot of the information that we're being provided, and I don't want any of you to stay behind or not have any idea of what's going on. So just really try to make time for those readings. Also, I did grade assessment 12A over the weekend, and I have noticed that a lot of us are being dishonest during the exams and with our homework assignments and with our exit tickets. And only because it's online school, it doesn't mean that you're not held accountable. Academic dishonesty is bad in any way, whether it's online, in person, in whatever grade you want it to be. If you in college, you can get kicked out of school for copying, for searching up answers and taking it off Google. I remind you, I read every single assignment you turn in. I read everyone's work. A lot of you don't even change up the words, just copy and paste from 2, 3 other people. Just know that every time I catch you cheating or catch you copying off answers off the internet, it's an automatic 0. I don't have tolerance for copying. I don't have tolerance for not even trying. I rather give you an honest 50 than give you a cheated 100. Because if you're not showing me the work that you're doing, then there's no way that I can help you.